Women are front and center today on the David Toulis Show here at 92.7 and 95.3 HD4, FM HD4, high definition radio 4. The digital quality is so rich that if you graphed out all the sounds of the show, you would have a separate graph showing the host's Adam's apple bobbing up and down in his neck. It is that fine. Kind of wasted perhaps on talk radio, but that's what we offer. The best of talk here. David Toulis, the Sean Hannity Station, CBS Radio News. We have Alex Jones for an hour every day. The man who's under FB censorship, and you'll want to hear him, and a wonderful, very aggressive, vigorous morning show with Russ and Val every day here at Nuga Radio. The name is David Toulis. Love your neighbor, buy local. And I argue that near is better than far. Dr. Lococentric, right? Small is better than big. Small countries are less belligerent than big. Simple than complex. What do you want to have, the Bible, or do you want to have the U.S. Code and the Tennessee Code annotated? Personal is better than corporate, and physical is generally way better than abstract. And the number is 800-8949, 800-8949. Just want you to know that I do not offer legal advice, as I have said before. I'm not offering legal counsel, or any kind of legal advice. I'm not an attorney, have not studied law in law school, and have no license to give advice or do any kind of representation or service in that direction. David Toulis, the blogger with the biggest pen. And that pen, of course, is a 100-plus foot radio tower that vibrates gently as my voice emanates from the directional antenna on top of Lookout Mountain. And we are glad that you are giving me just a half a minute of your time. If I get that much, I'm satisfied, and you won't need to go to Nuganomics.com for the latest read. That being today, my accounting of Red Bank, Tennessee, which is unwilling really to admit that it has gotten the dreaded notice. David Toulis's transportation administrative notice, a 20-page legal study making the point that there is a distinction between travel by right and transportation by privilege, under license and under taxation and under regulation of our great and noble state government and its agents in city and county. But I don't give legal advice. However, I do expect that the notice will be making what is on your mind. Thanks for calling,
David. Even though you're not a licensed attorney and you can't give legal advice, not a lawyer, I mean, reading of the law is pretty much simple. It's in plain English. You know, it's not in Chinese, and there are a lot of people that are pro se litigants, which means for oneself.
I was one.
And at the time of the founders, they didn't even really like lawyers. I believe the first Supreme Court didn't even have lawyers. I think they were all non-lawyers. Remember, the first Supreme Court. So you don't have to be a lawyer to understand the law or argue law. However, obviously you can't give legal advice, so on and so forth. But everyone has a right to their opinion on the law. Certainly you do too.
Well, listen, thanks. And you're right. This is David Toulis, and my analysis, my reporting on the law is of an open thing. Law is open, law is public, and you, my listener, are expected to know every law that applies to you. And you, my listener, have a duty, I would say, before God, to obey all laws that apply to you that attach a liability or a duty to you. However, because you're not a slave, even though you may have ancestors who were enslaved to the white establishment, you are free to act in any way where you're not bound by law and where you're not affecting or injuring or causing a tort or wrong or injury to another person. And that's called the free market. And that's what I argue here on the David Toulis Show, the free market. 800-8949 is the number, 800-8949. The women have the day today, and just for a heads up, Constance Giles and her daughter Kayla had a meeting at 9 o'clock that went. I was very glad to hear it went more than an hour, with the assistant DA Christina Antalis and a domestic violence investigator in Whitfield County named Jeff Silvers. More than an hour, and she was making demands. She was saying she had two parts to her presentation, as I understand it. One was saying the charges against me for obstruction, willful obstruction under the Georgia statute is simply bogus because the officer was not there for a lawful purpose. Officer Lieutenant Lowry, a notable ruffian on the Sheriff Chitwood's payroll. And then the second part of Constance Giles's meeting of demands were, I demand discovery. I want to know everything about these charges. Well, no, that's the first part. Sorry, the first part was demanding discovery on the criminal charge against her for a date still ahead and unidentified on the court docket in the lowest court in Whitfield County. And the second part is demanding and reporting to the DA's office the criminal act of the deputy. And she is saying, well, the deputy acted in a criminal fashion by assaulting her 6-year-old, her 8-year-old, and numerous other children individually. Because when you threaten to tase and have your laser beam pointing at a group of females on a couch in a room in their own house, and you say, step back or I'm going to tase you, when you break that down, that's a taser threat to a child 1, child number 2, child number 3, child number 4. So each of those children, you could say, ostensibly was assaulted by the threat of one of the two officers with that weapon drawn. And of course, the mom at this point is on the ground on the tarmac just outside the garage door, where these officers had kind of charged in after being summoned by a feckless 911 call to deal with 2 men in the house whom apparently were repo agents violating their own rules in Georgia, and seemingly getting some support from the Deputy Chitwood, Sheriff Chitwood's officers. One of them was arrested, though, for injuring one of the girls. So there was a kind of a melee and scene caused by the officers and the repo people in that case. And Constance Giles was in fighting form, and she was demanding discovery and demanding, and this is important, demanding good faith on the part of the state actor, the state employee, rather than the opposite, which is called bad faith. Bad faith is poison. It's poison to any accusation. It's poison to any defense at all. And now, just to mention bad faith, my notice project uses good faith and bad faith as an operating pivot. If the officer's been notified, he can't, in good faith, arrest someone not involved in transportation. You see what I'm saying? And in fact, I have a paper coming out in the next few days, by God's grace, talking about the doctrine of notice and how notice creates a change in the relationship between two parties. And good faith plays an important role in that. One cannot say, I did not know and I did not intend to oppress this person. And a person who has been notified of a change in the law in that relationship, who still acts according to the old way, is acting in bad faith. We're talking with Keila Jackson, who is a blogger here in Chattanooga, and from the Atlanta area. She had a driver's license from Georgia, and for the past 4 years now, Keila Jackson, who has part of her income, part of her cash flow in her life as a teacher, she has I would say a deplorable situation. In one of her letters to a court clerk, I believe it's Mrs. Quarles here in the Chattanooga City Court, she has the following sentence. She says, "Please help me. Please help me. Please. Thank you very much." And it's a letter to the court clerk that went out in November 7, 2016. And this has been a matter for 4 years unsettled. And she has been, Keila Jackson has been under what I call a Title 55 effective death penalty, a civil death penalty. Keila, for the listener who's just now joining us, tell him or her what we're talking about.
We are talking about the situation with my license. And before I even continue, I would be remiss if I weren't to thank you, David, for allowing me to share my story. I'd also like to thank anyone who's ever given me a ride, family, coworkers, anyone who's given me a ride and who has seen that my will is there. As you've already said, by God's grace, I am a worker. I'm here to make the world a better place. And that's what I do in everything that I do. And with my license situation, I have desperately tried to resolve this peacefully and responsibly. And at this point in time, I have no other recourse other than the options that you have offered. And I simply ask for assistance. I simply ask for someone to review my situation and help me in the best way possible.
Well, that could be reviewing the record. You were charged. Just fill my listener in who's just joining us, Keila Jackson. What is it that you were charged with? And it seems again, charges amiss, charges misfiring and spattering you with grief.
As I have already stated, I was actually driving someone who was sick. This person was vomiting. He was dehydrated. He was a construction worker, and he was unable to safely operate the vehicle. And with having a valid license, I simply acted as a good Samaritan and drove the vehicle. The vehicle did have a headlight that was out, the left headlight that was out, and it had some other issues. However, as the person in the vehicle who honestly feared for her life due to his sickness, I chose to be a good Samaritan. And in doing so, we were pulled over and I was charged with all of the violations of the vehicle, despite the fact that it was not my vehicle.
And those include what?
They include registration, city sticker, improper lights, and proof of insurance. With the proof of insurance, I was able to handle those fines within the state of Tennessee. And with the state of Tennessee, I was told that after I paid that, then that should clear me with the state of Georgia. From that point in time, there was a representative within the safety department of the state of Tennessee who contacted the state of Georgia. The state of Georgia then actually refused that notice and said that I would have to go back to county court and have a hearing, and then they would consider my situation.
Did you have notice about your license suspension pending? Did the state of Georgia send you a letter or say, ma'am, you've got options here, you can appeal this proposed suspension? Because I know Tennessee has a statute that's very clear. If a suspension is proposed, you have a right to a contested case hearing.
No, David. And if at this point in time, had I received that notification, I wouldn't be in this point. This would have been handled far beyond now.
You would have contested it. You would have had that administrative hearing.
Yes, correct. So also with your questions to me, you asked me who is impacted by this situation. I'm here to say, as I ride the bus, as I walk the streets every day, I see and I hear the stories of the people. And driver's license situation, this is truly a systematic situation, and it is a problem. With the people on the bus that I hear, the stories that I hear, we have men who are affected by child support cases where their licenses have been revoked. They're working 2 and 3 and 4 jobs, but they're trying to do the best that they can do while riding the public transportation. We also have working mothers. You've already said that today's the day of the woman. Woohoo! I received that. We have working mothers who are just trying to make sure that they make at least a basic minimum wage, and their money's going toward riding the bus and paying for bus fare for their children. I even can contest to that. Having all of my activities, all of my community activities and involvements, I still have to make sure that I'm working all of this so that I can make at least a bare minimum wage. And I'm way below the poverty wage.
We're talking with Keila Jackson. Now, tell my listener what you have heard about and what you know about the Alita Trauger decision. This is called the Trauger decision in U.S. District Court in Nashville. What do you understand is the fruit of that opinion, and is there a possible remedy for people, maybe not you, but people like you, Keila?
Well, David, as you have explained, and I know that you have beautifully illustrated it in your story, I have received that with this ruling, it is stated that it is unfair and unlawful for citizens to have the license revoked, that it basically takes away the right to travel, the right for transport and for transportation. And a driver's license it's a necessity.
You cannot live in Tennessee without one. You simply, correct. So effectively, you have a right to drive. You have a right to travel, of course, and you have a right to drive. And so when the state especially says those people who are too poor to pay, their licenses are being revoked, there are almost 250,000 of them. It's almost 250,000 people too poor to pay, yeah, having their licenses revoked and suspended. And caller, this is David Tulis. Thanks for calling. Fill in for me, please.
David, I don't like to call back twice, but what I was going to say last time was there's something called a hardship or restricted driver's license. And you have to look at the particular statute in Tennessee, but they may be able to apply for that, where they say, I need to drive between these hours to be able to earn money so I can pay off my fines.
I'd forgotten about that.
What's that?
You're right. I had forgotten about that. The hardship license.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a hardship license.
Okay.
So they may want to look into that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mike. Appreciate Mike and I. We talk law all the time. Our small talk is never. We know nothing about sports. Absolutely nothing. We care not for folly, but we talk about law all the time and liberty all the time. That's Mike. Mike and David Toulis, long, fast and good friends here at 92.7 FM. This is David Toulis, Nougat Radio, and we're talking with Keila Jackson. Keila, tell my listener. Okay, so the ruling is in favor of the poor.
Yes.
It's unconstitutional for the state government through a system which we have hammered elsewhere on other points to say you've not paid your fine, and because you can't pay your fine, we're going to make sure that you are stuck in poverty for good. And we're going to ruin you. That's what's happened. It's punitive, and I'd say it's not just punitive. It's not just unconstitutional. It's ungodly. Now here we want to just mention to you something. If you do a Google on Trauger driver license ruling, and you'll come up with the Tennessean story. Now the story has details. There's a phone number that you can call, and let me just if you're not going to remember how to find the story to get the details, let me just give it to you now. It's 866-903-7357, 866-903-7357, and that's the state reinstatement center created by the Trauger decision just about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's just very new. The state has 60 days to complete the creation of the center and help everybody who has now a right to get their license restored. Now, the state government, the white legal lawyer establishment in Nashville is given notice of appeal, but it's not likely, from what I would guess, that they're going to demand that this stay on this part of the ruling. So they're going to go ahead and have this process begin. So you call that number, and someone can talk you through your situation. So I'm guessing half of the African American population has a license in trouble. Would you guess that's true, Keila?
I would, yes.
Almost every black person I meet has this problem. I ask every black person I meet, how's your license? I mean, that's my small talk over Coca-Cola is, how's your license doing? Because I know that it's a grievous injury and a grievous problem among minorities, African Americans, and immigrants, most of whom have no license at all, who are under oppression. They live in fear on the road, and you can be sure immigrants are careful drivers and travelers, because they know that if anything happens and the cop shows up, they're in trouble. They know that. Yes. And so they, and black people, unless they're young and foolish and on alcohol, they are very careful because they do not want to deal with the cop. They do not want, is that true?
Yes. And I would add that it is, clearly you've said the poor and the less fortunate, but it is a socioeconomic issue as well. I would not necessarily say every African American. However, I would venture to say that most African Americans within the poverty line, they do house this fear.
Yes. And so again, the website is dl.safety.tn.gov. Again, it's a Tennessean article by a man named Boucher, and explains the remedy. And the number again is 866-903-7357. If you, there are thousands of people in Hamilton County who have this problem, and they don't read Nouganomics, and they don't read the Times Free Press, so they don't necessarily know. But you know, and you, my listener, I want you to pass word about this, okay? There is a remedy for these people if they're too poor to pay, and there are thousands in this county, thousands,
yes.
Okay, thousands. You have a duty to pass word about this to people you know. Ask if they have a problem. Ask if you can pass along this information. And always feel free to contact me. The name is David Toulis, and we are here live every day at 1 o'clock, trying to offer solutions and trying to make noise about the right things about which to make noise and complaint. Thinking of solutions, thinking of remedy. In the end, for me, is thinking about giving God's grace to people, spreading God's grace and mercy and lenity and hope to people. That Christ, I'm a sinner. Christ died for my sins. He had grace on me. So my job and your job is to give grace to others, especially people who are beneath you, right? In socioeconomic level, maybe in knowledge, education, connections. You, my listener, are the man of capital, the woman of capital. You, I charge you today, this Friday, to have a little social capital going to people who have less than you do.
Yes.
Do it in mercy. Do it in love. And like Marie Mott says, she loves you, we love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's her motto, and we love her. Tune in to Marie on Monday at 11 o'clock. And this is David Toulis with the Sean Hayes Station. Sean is next with the National Report here on Nuga Radio, 92.7 FM. Local economy and free market is my theme. And that number again is 866-903-7357 to get your license restored. That's the Department of Safety in Nashville. That office will help you if you've got a problem with your license. David Toulis.
3, 2, 1.
Chatter, Nuga Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
A crane crash in Hickson may be worse than we thought. Although nobody was hurt when a crane toppled to the ground on Boy Scout Road, 3 homes were condemned. Reports say the crane belonged to Big Woody's Tree Service. It's still not known why the crane fell over, but what's clear is the damage it left behind. The roofs of 3 homes were caved in, and the families which lived inside have to go somewhere else.